Have you ever felt like no matter how much you gave your time, your loyalty, your heart, it was never enough for someone to truly see your worth? You waited, hoping they'd realize your value. But instead, they treated your presence like a guarantee, not a gift. What if I told you the most powerful move you can make is walking away, not to hurt them, but to finally set yourself free? Let that thought linger for a moment. You gave everything. You showed up with sincerity, with commitment, believing that if you just kept proving yourself, she would eventually see that your loyalty would be rewarded. But she didn't. She assumed you'd always be there on standby, ready to respond whenever it suited her. She never paused to appreciate the depth of what you offered. And the most painful part, you allowed it. You accepted less than you deserved. You convinced yourself that holding on a little longer might make a difference. But deep inside, you already knew she never saw you as essential. You weren't a priority. You were a convenience, replaceable, easy to overlook. But that stops now. Today is the turning point. The day you take your power back. From this moment on, you stop chasing validation from someone who never truly valued you. This isn't about revenge. It's not about making her regret her choices. It's about becoming a man who rises above her decisions. A man whose strength lies in his ability to remain grounded and in control. She believed you'd always be there, waiting in the shadows, ready to be picked up again when convenient. She was wrong, because the second you let go, the second you choose to detach and move forward without looking back, is the moment everything begins to shift. Not just for her, but for you. You start becoming something she never expected. A man completely beyond her reach. A man who has developed such inner mastery that her presence or absence no longer defines him. That is the real power shift. She treated you like an option. Now she knows what it feels like to be forgotten, not out of anger, not out of bitterness, but because you finally understand one undeniable truth. Your time, your energy, and your presence are not just valuable. They are sacred. And now that you've taken the first step toward reclaiming your worth, let's talk about what comes next, because the journey doesn't end here. It's just beginning. You've already made the shift, choosing to walk away, choosing yourself. And now comes the moment where silence speaks louder than any words. She feels your absence, like a heavy emptiness that follows her everywhere. That silence, the space you used to fill, will start to haunt her. She wonders why it feels so different. She noticed the stillness and realized something's missing. Your indifference, your emotional distance, it will disturb her far more than any confrontation ever could. She began to question, to overthink. Why isn't he reaching out? Did I go too far? Did I lose him for good? But by the time those questions arise, it won't matter. Because by then, you'll be gone mentally, emotionally, spiritually. You will have already evolved beyond her reach. And that, right there, becomes her final lesson. Lesson number 1. The illusion of choice. She thought she held all the cards. She believed she was in control, that your presence was guaranteed, no matter how little she gave in return. In her mind, no matter how long she kept you waiting, you'd still be there, ready to accept crumbs, eager for her slightest attention. Why? Because you made yourself too available. You behaved as though she was the one with options, and you were just lucky to be included in her life. You played the role of the grateful one, content to receive whatever she handed out, no matter how small. But here's the reality. People don't cherish what's always within arm's reach. They don't value what requires no effort. The mind naturally devalues anything in abundance. And that's where things broke. You became just another choice, something easy to overlook. Not essential, not irreplaceable. Not the man she feared losing, because you gave her no reason to fear your absence. You made it too easy, too predictable. And that was your mistake. But not anymore, because now the roles have reversed. You are no longer waiting. You are no longer seeking approval. You've stepped away completely. You've taken yourself out of her orbit, out of the game entirely. And when you do that, something powerful begins to unfold. Scarcity. What's scarce becomes valuable. What's no longer easily reachable suddenly holds weight. And when she realizes you're no longer an option, no longer reachable at will, she feel that absence. She question everything. She wonder if she miscalculated. If, in trying to keep control, she lost something real. She thought she could delay the consequences. That you'd still be there somewhere if she ever changed her mind. But by the time that thought crosses her mind, it will already be too late, because you won't be waiting. You won't be frozen in place, holding on to false hope. You'll be far ahead mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Focus not on her, but on your own journey, on growth, on discipline, on building the man you were always meant to become. She made her choice. Now she has to live with it. Lesson number 2. Emotional detachment, the ultimate power. She made her decision. And now the consequences are hers to carry. But here's the twist. This isn't about her anymore. This part of the story? It's about you. It's about taking back the strength you unknowingly gave away. Everything begins to shift the very moment you stop caring, not pretending, not masking it. Truly, deeply, no longer reacting, no longer attaching your value to someone else's opinion. When you stop chasing, when you stop seeking validation, when you stop trying to matter in her world, you flip the entire dynamic on its head. Because here's an unshakable truth. The one who needs less always holds the power. For far too long, she held power over you, not because she earned it, but because you handed it to her. You tied your happiness to her responses. You measured your worth by her attention. You waited for her approval like a man starving for scraps. But that man? He's gone. The moment you detach, you become something she can't read anymore. And that uncertainty? It stings, it lingers. It pulls at her thoughts in ways your words never could. Unpredictability creates curiosity, and curiosity often leads to regret. Now, let's be clear, emotional detachment doesn't mean becoming numb or cold. It means becoming anchored. So, deeply centered in who you are, that no person, no woman, no rejection, no shifting emotion can shake your core. And when you reach that level of inner command, everything changes. You stop explaining yourself. You stop trying to prove anything. You stop chasing what was never meant for you. And suddenly, she feels it. That energy she used to take for granted, gone. That attention she once dismissed, now vanished. And in its place, silence, but not just any silence, the kind that screams. She starts to wonder, why hasn't he called? Why hasn't he tried to reach out? Why hasn't he fought to get me back? And in that silence, something creeps in that she never expected. Doubt in her decisions, doubt in her choices, and most importantly, doubt in whether she ever really held control in the first place. Because now the roles have reversed. Now, she's the one checking her phone. She's the one replaying conversations in her mind. She's the one searching for signs that you still care. But she finds nothing. No calls, no messages, no last-ditch attempts, and that absence? It rattles her because for the first time, she realizes all along, this was never really about her, it was about you. About stepping fully into the strength of a man who no longer begs, no longer chases, and no longer needs. Because the moment you internalize one life-changing truth, that your worth is not tied to anyone else's approval, you become untouchable. That's what real strength looks like. That's what mastery feels like. And that kind of man, he commands more than attraction. He earns respect. And respect holds far more power than mere desire ever will. Lesson number 3. Silence speaks louder than words. Emotional detachment is only the beginning of the transformation. The next step, discipline. The discipline to say nothing, even when every fiber of your being wants to speak, explain, or reach back. You see, she expects a reaction. She expects anger. She expects frustration, confusion, or some desperate attempt to win her over, because that's what most men do. They chase closure. They talk endlessly, trying to soften the blow, hoping to make her understand their side. They try to force clarity into a situation that's already broken. And in doing so, they weaken their position. They hand their power back word by word, message by message. But the man who truly knows his worth, he chooses differently. No arguments, no final messages, no attempts to be understood, only silence. Calm, intentional, unshakable silence. And that silence, it echoes louder than any speech ever could. Because silence introduces something she never expected. Uncertainty. The moment you stop explaining yourself, the moment you no longer chase or justify your absence, she begins to feel the void. She feels the lack of energy she used to take for granted. The validation she once dismissed is now gone. And in that emptiness, her mind begins to spiral. Did I make the right choice? Why hasn't he said anything? Why isn't he trying to fix this? She waits for the moment you crack. For the text, for the phone call, for the final predictable sign that she still holds sway over you. When it never comes, when you vanish completely, without a trace, something new begins to take root. Powerlessness. She never expected that. Most women don't. They're used to being chased, even by the men they walk away from. But when you remove yourself from her world completely, something inside her breaks. You become a mystery. A question with no answer. A silence too loud to ignore. And the human mind? It obsesses over unanswered questions. Why is he not calling? Has he already moved on? Did he actually forget about me? These thoughts consume her, because deep down, she was convinced she knew you. She thought she had you figured out, that no matter what, you'd always be in the background, quietly waiting, hoping for one more chance. But now she's forced to face something she never saw coming. You're gone. And in that moment, regret creeps in. She checks her phone and sees no missed calls, no messages, no signs that she still lives in your thoughts. She searches for you in familiar places, maybe even scrolls through your social media, expecting to find a trace of the man who once needed her. But there's nothing. And in that silence, finally, she understands exactly what she had, and exactly what she lost. She realizes now what she had, and what she lost. But you've already turned the page. While most men beg for closure, waiting for one final text or explanation, a stoic man creates his own closure through absence. No calls, no late-night confessions, no emotional outbursts to prove he's still hurting. Only silence, calm, steady. complete indifference. Because nothing is more unnerving to someone who once had your heart than knowing they no longer have your attention. Lesson #4. Rebuilding. Become unrecognizable. The silence has done its work. The absence has carved its impression. But now, none of your energy belongs to her anymore. Your attention has shifted inward, and now you stand at a crossroads. You can stay frozen, replaying every memory, analyzing every word, wondering where it went wrong. You can sink into bitterness, become consumed by what-ifs, and let self-pity take hold. Or you can rise. You can take every ounce of pain, every drop of disappointment, and transform it into raw fuel for reinvention. Because the greatest revenge is never found in anger, it's found in evolution. While most men stay shackled to the past, waiting for messages that will never arrive, seeking closure from someone who's already moved on. The man who knows his value doesn't look back. He knows the past is a graveyard, and he has no interest in digging up what's already buried. His focus is fixed forward, on what he's creating, on who he is becoming. And this is the separation point. This is where you break free from the average, from the emotional, from the weak. Discipline becomes your new language, your body, your mind, your direction in life. It all begins to transform. You train relentlessly. You build a body that commands respect, not to win her back, not to prove a point, but because you're sculpting a version of yourself that even you admire. You sharpen your mind reading, learning, expanding. You elevate your finances, because a man who controls his wealth controls his freedom, and most importantly, you master your emotions, because the man who remains calm in chaos, who does not flinch when others crumble, that is the man who becomes untouchable, unshaken, unbothered, indifferent to the noise of the world. And here lies the beautiful paradox. The very moment you stop focusing on her, the very moment you pour all of your energy into building yourself, that's when she starts noticing. She begins to wonder where you've gone. She starts looking for the version of you she once knew, only to find he no longer exists, because the man she discarded, he's not waiting anymore. He's not hoping. He's not watching the door. He has outgrown everything that once kept him small, and now he stands beyond her reach. From the man who once pleaded for attention, to the man who now walks with such power, others quietly wish they had never let him go. But by the time she realizes the depth of what she lost, it no longer matters. Because you've already built something far greater. You've become something far rarer. You have become the prize. Lesson number 5. The art of indifference. You've done the work. You've rebuilt from the ashes. The past no longer chains you. The hunger for validation? Gone. Now comes the final step in this transformation. Indifference. She assumes that deep down, you still care. That no matter how strong you appear on the surface, some part of you is still paying attention. She believes that behind your silence, you're simply waiting for the right moment to react, to reach out, to remind her she still matters. But what she never expected was real indifference, not an act, not a temporary phase, not a mask to hide secret longing. You're not pretending. You're not suppressing emotions in the hope that she returns. You're not checking her posts or crafting a response you'll never send. You're simply free. And when she gets nothing, no response, no emotion, no hint of weakness, the very foundation of her confidence starts to tremble. Because indifference is the highest form of power. It announces to the world, and more importantly, to yourself, that nothing outside of you determines how you feel. Not her. not rejection, not loss. A man who is truly indifferent is a man who is truly free. And the moment you stop caring, you stop being controlled. And the moment you stop being controlled, you become the one in control. That is the essence of Stoicism, that understanding that the only thing you can ever truly govern is yourself. Most men crumble under emotional pressure. They let their feelings dictate their actions. They chase what's already slipped through their fingers. They try to prove their worth loving to someone who has already shown them. They're not, but you're not most men. You enter a room with quiet, unwavering presence. Your energy doesn't beg, it commands. It says, I am whole with or without you. And that energy? It's impossible to ignore. It forces others to reflect, to regret, to revisit the moment they took you for granted and wonder, what if? That's the power of indifference non-reaction. If she posts something calculated to provoke you, you remain unmoved. If she sends a vague message to test the waters, you leave it unread or don't read it at all. If you cross paths and she subtly probes to see if she still matters, you give her nothing. Not hostility, not attention, just peace. And when she finally understands that the power she once held over you has completely dissolved, that's when the truth cuts deepest. She no longer matters in your world. It was never about her. It never has been. This has always been about one thing: self-mastery. About forging a mind so disciplined, so grounded, so resilient, that no rejection, no person, no loss can shake your foundation. Because here's the simple truth: the man who controls his emotions controls everything. Lesson number 6. When she notices the shift, you've embraced indifference, you've committed to discipline. And now, without effort, without planning, something begins to shift. She starts to notice. At first, she convinces herself that nothing has changed. She tells herself you're just pretending, that you're still lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to reach out. She expects you to slip, to crack, to react to her stories, to send a message, to offer her proof that she still lives somewhere in your thoughts. But time passes, and nothing happens. No texts, no comments, no signs of the man who once hung on her every move. And that's when it hits her something's different, because women are intuitive. They can feel energetic shifts, even in silence. And now she can sense it in her bones. Your energy is gone. You're no longer watching. You're no longer hoping. You're no longer waiting for her validation. And for the first time, she knows. It's not an act. This isn't a tactic. It's real. She starts to feel the absence of your attention. Not just notice it, but feel it. Like a void she didn't expect to open up inside her. At first, she shrugs it off. He must still be thinking about me, she reassures herself. But doubt creeps in, a whisper, a question she can't shake. What if I was wrong? What if he really doesn't care anymore? What if he's moved on to something better, or someone better? What if I miscalculated? That's when regret begins to seep in, not because she lost you, but because she thought she owned you. She thought she could always come back when it was convenient, that you'd still be there waiting, open, hopeful. But now, she's no longer sure. And this is where most men fail. The moment she throws out a breadcrumb, maybe a casual "Hey, how have you been?" a like on your story, a comment that seems innocent, most men leap. They take the bait. They reply. They show their hand. They try to prove they still matter. But you're not most men. You understand that the second you respond, even subtly, she wins. She confirms that she still has a hold on you. That despite everything, she still occupies space in your mind. But when she reaches out and is met with silence, when even her quietest attempts to pull your attention back fall into a void, that's when everything begins to shift. Now she's the one questioning herself. She's the one feeling the sting of being ignored. She's the one losing control. And for the first time ever, you are the one she can't have. And let's be honest, there's nothing more unsettling than realizing you've lost control over something you once believed belonged to you. That's where true power lies. Not in mind games, not in revenge, but in becoming so deeply aligned with your own path that nothing outside of you can pull you off course. She's starting to realize something devastating. She no longer has access to your world. And when that truth fully settles in, she'll regret ever taking your presence for granted. Lesson number 7. The return test. Will you fail it? By now, the shift is undeniable. She's felt the silence. She's noticed the emptiness where your attention used to live. And now, right on cue, she moves. It always happens when a man truly detaches. When he stops chasing. When he pours everything into himself and no longer looks her way. She returns. At first, it may seem innocent, casual even. A simple, "Hey, how have you been?" A like on an old photo. A comment on your story. A sudden name popping up in your notifications after weeks or months of silence. Or maybe she doesn't say anything at all. She stays in the shadows, observing you quietly, watching from afar, hovering around your digital life, waiting for a crack to appear. She wants to see, will you break first? Will you reach out? Do you still care? Make no mistake, this is a test. She doesn't miss you. Not yet. What she misses is the control. The comfort of knowing that no matter what happened, you were always there. That you were still an option. She could revisit any time, but now that option has vanished. And she needs to know, can I still pull him back in? Does he still feel something? And this is where most men fail. The moment she sends even the smallest sign, a brief message, a reaction to an old memory, a nostalgic emoji on a post, most men jump. They convince themselves, this is it. She regrets losing me. And just like that, they fall right back into the same loop. Because the second you engage, the second you respond, everything changes. The power returns to her. The mystery evaporates. Her curiosity is satisfied. Her doubt disappears. She gets what she wanted. Confirmation. Confirmation that you were never really gone. That you were just waiting, hoping, craving her return. And in that instant, everything you've built starts to collapse. Maybe she entertains the connection for a moment. Maybe she flirts, sends signals, shows interest. Just enough to keep you hopeful. But in the end, she will do exactly what she did before, walk away. But you're different now. You see the pattern clearly. You recognize the test for what it is. And you do what few men have the strength to do. You pass. You don't flinch. You don't respond. You don't offer her even the smallest hint that she still has influence over your emotions. Because the truth is, you're not playing this game anymore. You've outgrown it. You've outgrown her. This was never about winning her back. It was never about proving anything to her. All of this, every step, every silence, every discipline has never been about her. It's always been about one thing, proving something to yourself, that you're no longer the man who waits. No longer the man who needs her validation. No longer the version of you she once thought she could control. And when she finally realizes that you genuinely don't care anymore, that's the moment she truly feels the full weight of her loss. Lesson number 8. The power shift. Now she feels what you once felt, the confusion, the emptiness, the silent questioning in the middle of the night, the ache of wondering what went wrong. The same uncertainty that once kept you up at night is now haunting her. But there's one critical difference. When you were in that space, you still held on. You believed in what the two of you once had. You convinced yourself that if you just proved your worth, if you just held on a little longer, she would finally see the truth. But now your eyes are open. Now you see what she never expected you to understand. You were never the one losing. For the first time, she begins to question herself. She replays old memories, the way you looked at her, the way you listened, the way you always showed up. And then she sees something she never truly noticed before. You were rare. You were valuable. You were real. And now, you're gone. Of course, she may never say it aloud. She may act unaffected. She might even convince herself that she's fine. But beneath the surface, she's feeling the sting of the very pain she once made you feel, because when she took you for granted, she never once considered the possibility that you'd actually leave, that you'd actually move on, that you'd become something greater without her. She assumed you'd always orbit around her life, always watching, always waiting. But now, she's staring at a version of you she can't even recognize, a man who no longer centers his life around her, a man who has evolved, elevated, and outgrown everything she once offered. And this is the moment when the power shift becomes undeniable. Because here's the hard truth: she never truly respected the man who chased her. She didn't value the one who put her above himself, but the man who disappeared, the man who walked away, who transformed, who never looked back. That's the man she remembers. That's the man she regrets losing. But now comes the final lesson. You don't return. You don't entertain the past. You don't reopen a chapter that's already been closed. Because the version of you who waited, he no longer exists. She thought you'd stay the same. She thought you'd break. But now she sees it clearly. You never needed her to begin with. Lesson number 9. Mastery over emotions. The final lesson. The power shift is complete. But this story? It was never about her. It was never about making her regret. Never about getting even. Never about revenge or trying to prove anything to her. This has always been about you. Your growth. Your discipline. Your quiet, relentless transformation into Kofa. A man who is no longer ruled by emotional turbulence. No longer defined by someone else's approval. No longer swayed by the fleeting desires of another person. Because true power isn't found in getting someone to miss you. It isn't about orchestrating outcomes or manipulating emotions. It's found in reaching a point where their absence means nothing. Most men live their lives in a constant state of reaction. They react to rejection. They react to heartbreak. They react to someone else's choices like their worth is a negotiation, like their identity depends on being chosen. But the man who has achieved self-mastery, he doesn't react. He observes, he understands, and he moves forward with calm, with clarity, with conviction. He does not beg. He does not chase. He simply chooses himself, again and again, no matter who stays or who leaves. And now, that is the man you've become. She once believed she could walk away without consequences. She thought you'd collapse, that you'd wait, that you'd stay in place frozen, unchanged. But now she sees the truth. You were never weak. You were never disposable. And the man she assumed would always be there, he's long gone. She thought you were replaceable. But now she sees what you've become and understands what she lost. The truth is, you were the prize all along. She just failed to recognize it until it was far too late. But that's no longer your concern, because now you've embraced the most important truth of all. Your happiness, your peace, your power, none of it was ever hers to give or take away. And that realization, it changes everything. Freezes the emotional storm. It makes you untouchable, not because you're numb, but because you're free. Lesson number 10. Freedom, the ultimate victory. Mastery over your emotions wasn't the final destination. It was the gateway to something far greater. Freedom. This was never about winning her back. It was never about making her suffer or hoping she'd feel the same pain you once carried. That kind of mindset only traps you. It keeps you stuck in a story that's already over. It keeps you living in the illusion that closure, validation, or revenge will somehow give you peace. But this was about liberation. Freedom from the emotional chains that once weighed you down. Freedom from the need to be seen, to be chosen, to be understood. Freedom from letting your sense of worth be dictated by someone else's decision. Think about it. How much of your time, your energy, your mental space was once consumed by her? How often did you replay conversations hoping to find clues, meanings, or hidden signals in words that no longer mattered? How much of your inner peace did you sacrifice, hoping for a different ending? But now it no longer matters. You don't seek answers. You don't need closure. You don't crave her attention. That is power. That is victory. Because the greatest revenge, the truest success, was never about making her regret. It was about reaching the point where she no longer holds any relevance. You're no longer the man she walked away from. You're no longer the one who placed her above his own peace. You're no longer the man who waited, wondered, or wished. That version of you is gone. And in his place now stands a different man. A man who is grounded, unshaken, driven, focused. A man who doesn't chase or seek. A man who walks in alignment with purpose, not desperation. And that kind of man, he's rare, he's magnetic. Not just to women, but to the world. Because when a man takes full ownership of his mind, his emotions, and his future, he becomes unstoppable. Now she feels what you once felt, the doubt, the emptiness, the longing. The sting of knowing that what was once hers is now completely out of reach. But here's the most powerful part. You don't even notice. Because while she's busy looking back, you've already moved so far forward. Her memory can't catch up. That's the difference. The difference between those who stay stuck in the past and those who rise to dominate the future. Because this was never about her. It was always about you. And now, finally, you see that truth. Everything has led to this moment. From the pain to the silence, from detachment to discipline, you've made the full transformation. You began this journey as a man who was overlooked, dismissed, taken for granted. You gave your heart, your time, your loyalty to someone who never truly saw your value. But look at you now. Look at the distance you've traveled. You are no longer chained to your past, no longer burdened by what she did, no longer haunted by what she thought or how she walked away. Because now you know none of it ever really mattered. What mattered was you. Your growth, your discipline, Your ability to take heartbreak and pain and forge it into steel. You've done what most men never will. You've become unbreakable. You've proven that you can walk away without closure and still stand tall, that you don't need validation, that you don't need anyone to recognize your worth, because now you see it clearly. And the moment you acknowledged your own value, you became untouchable. She once believed you'd wait. She assumed you'd chase. She thought she could always come back to you whenever it suited her. But she was wrong, because you didn't just move on. You disappeared. And now, she's the one looking back. She's the one questioning everything. She's the one who lost, but none of that matters anymore. Because you've outgrown the need for revenge. You've let go of regret. You've left behind anything and everything that doesn't align with your purpose. And that is what real victory looks like. Not in getting her back, not in making her jealous, but in reaching the place where her presence or her absence has absolutely no power over you. Because now, you've unlocked the greatest truth of all. The man who needs nothing gains everything. This is the new you. Stronger, wiser, unshakable. A man who walks forward without hesitation. A man who commands respect, not by demanding it, but simply by embodying it. A man who never looks back, because forward is the only direction that matters now. This is the path of power. This is the path of self-mastery. So now, ask yourself one question: will you walk it? Let the world wonder where you went. You've already arrived.